Welcome to Real Estate While You Drive with Eric Stark. Whether walking, running, riding, driving, or flying, this podcast is for the real estate entrepreneur on the go. If you are looking for simple to consume, easy to implement real estate breakthroughs and strategies, Real Estate While You Drive will put you in the driver's seat on the fast track to success. Subscribe today and ask away. We are here to help you break through.
Hello, this is Eric Stark, and in this podcast, I'd like to talk to you about getting off the wholesaling hamster wheel. Now, first off, would like to send a huge shout out to all my wholesalers. I have so much love and respect for this side of the industry, and I'm actually a wholesaler at heart. I love every bit of a good wholesale deal. However, it took my business partner to really help me understand what we were missing out on if we were just going to continue to cut our own financial throats and be the experts in our market that was so very good at finding these deals. And when you really think about it, the fact that we have the ability to find properties and negotiate deals that others just can't seem to find, we're already in the door at much better pricing than what most other people are willing to buy at. So why wouldn't we pair that advantage with the know-how and understanding of being able to control that property, capture the equity, and grow our wealth over time versus taking the short end of the stick? And literally, we cut our financial throats by taking, a 2 or 5 or 7 or 10, or, there's deals that we've made $80,000 a signing, and, look at where the market's at today. That 80 grand would have been ours anytime we ever wanted to take it. We just chose to not really walk around the property properly and give us our money now. So the whole reason I'm recording this podcast is to give you a adverse look on the leverage and the horsepower of what's possible, and just exactly how do you transition from becoming a market dominating wholesaler to a wealth building property buyer. So I'm going to discuss a couple case studies in here that, again, it was seeing these deals unfold in a different aspect. As wholesalers, we're used to seeing things very, very fast. You're in and out, cashing out in 3 days. You're assigning the rights over. I mean, sometimes we do these deals through text messages, and you never meet the seller, you never meet the buyer. Like, it's a beautiful thing. But it took for me to physically go through the process of understanding the couple of case studies that I'm going to discuss today, because not only did we make more than 10 times what we would have made on a wholesale deal, we captured the financing, we controlled incredible assets, and it's truly those deals that allow us to wake up and have significance in life. You're going to hear me say this a couple of different times, because it was one of the things that my mentor had told me, is that as a wholesaler, you're only as good as your last month. So I want to go ahead and, talk about some of the important points that, wholesalers already have to their advantage, and then how to transition from a wholesaler to a income generating property owner, and give you guys a good little case study that can show the horsepower of what's possible. So I first would like to talk a little bit about the control that wholesalers have in a marketplace. As wholesalers, we are generally the first one in the door. We are spending a reasonable amount of time prospecting or marketing for deals. You are talking to, sellers on a daily basis, and it pretty much comes down to the wire, where you're just a glorified middleman. You are sandwiching a buyer and seller together, and believe it or not, there are deals that we structure in our owner finance business that I look at how simple it was to do this deal and get it to the closing table. And I just think about back when, if I were to have wholesaled this property, how much harder I would have worked. And what I mean by that is, as a wholesaler, when you get a property under contract on Monday, now Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you're searching for a buyer, you're marketing the property, you're doing your diligence, you're getting your photos, you're getting all these things ready. And again, you're going to work somewhere. It's not like you're going to move to buying properties and becoming a landlord or wrap notes or owner financing and just going to go retire on a beach somewhere. We're going to put in work somewhere. The picture that I'm trying to paint is the results and the return that you can get from the effort that you put in. So as wholesalers, we're already getting to these deals at margins that are better than what most other people are finding these deals at. So if a house is worth $100,000, you get it under contract for $40,000, and the average buyer is willing to pay $55,000. It's very simple to say, man, I just made $15,000 on this deal. However, why wouldn't you take that additional $15,000 and stuff it in your pocket, consider it equity, find a way to extract that money from that deal and live off it if you need to, or contribute it to the deal? There's a million ways to skin a cat if you're really willing to get educated and learn how to take these deals down. And I'll discuss a couple of those strategies as we move on. But I really want you to understand that you are the first person in the door getting a look at these opportunities. You already have an advantage over the competition. And the reason why this means so much is from a lender standpoint or a financing standpoint. When a lender says that you have to buy a property at 70% of after repaired value, and then you have to bring 20% to the closing, or whatever the case may be from traditional or hard money lenders, if you bring a deal to the table at 40 cents on the dollar, that should be all you have to bring whatsoever to get that deal to close. Because your 20% down is built into the great price that you've negotiated. You're well below the threshold of 60 or 70%. It's just finding somebody who's not so rigid. And again, I'm going to give you guys a couple of additional hidden sources for taking these deals down that are probably right under your nose now. You just haven't really experienced a situation where you can extract these types of deals. But as you're finding these deals, there's nothing wrong with assigning, some of them or a few of them. But being that you or us as wholesalers, we have just done a very, very good job of marketing for leads and having these things come across us, a lot of it is dependent on what your buyer's financial feet look like. Now, there's buyers out there that are just shrewd and they try to get properties cheaper than wholesalers get them, and they just have absolutely no idea how to take a property off the market when they see one. They are greedy. They want to be the wholesaler without doing the work of a wholesaler. And I would tell you guys just to let these kind of people go. Like, let them go in their little world and don't even interact with them. You can actually increase your value to these people by telling them that you're not interested in doing business. You're never going to take my position. If you make this transaction hard for me and you're going to complain about my fee, I'm just going to go on to the next guy. We have a gentleman in our market that is constantly coming to us for deals, and we've told him repeatedly, we're not wholesalers. We don't wholesale anymore. We are our own buyers, and we position every deal that we take down for us to have the money, for us to do the rehab, for us to build it new, for us to renovate and manage it, whatever the case may be. And if you'd like to buy this property, it has to be comparable to the number we're going to make if we choose the route that we're already planning to go. So as you guys are getting these deals to come in, you need to be prepared to eventually take the good ones off the market. And by good ones, I mean, the cleaner properties, the ones in nicer locations, the ones that may be turnkey, the ones that offer a very good potential upswing for whoever's going to be buying that property. We recently bought one that We actually bought it from a builder, and it came with a free double lot. And we just couldn't figure out why he wasn't, dividing these lots and keeping this bonus lot to either build on or keep or trade or whatever the case was. But a deal that we had already planned to rehab that he didn't want to touch, he simply passed on this lot for whatever reason. Even as a builder mentality, he didn't take that one. Now, I could have made a very, very quick phone call and text message, and we could have made $25,000 assigning that property. And we're going to go ahead and rehab it. But even if we chose to assign that deal, we would close on it first, go to the city, split the lot, get a separate address and parcel ID number, title it in our name, and then assign the other property to make our fee. But why would we go ahead and not maximize or take that one? That's keeping one of the good ones. Being that we're builders now and we understand the process of building property, we can do that deal ourselves, as to where most wholesalers just aren't geared up to maximize a property. They don't have the relationships with these rehabbers or these developers or these builders to say, you know what, there's a lot of money that's going to be made. I'm not just looking for my upfront fee and to go back about my business. I'm going to stay involved in this one, and it's going to be in the form of this. And you get to set your own rules. As the wholesaler controlling these leads, let me rephrase that. You should be positioning yourself to where you are the one setting the rules. If you're just a wholesaler and you never know where you're going to get the cash from, you're always having to assign these to other people and use their money, you don't have the capital to close, you're never in a leveraged position where you can close these things and walk around them properly and maximize your lead flow. So you're already in control of the market. You got consistent lead flow coming in. You're keeping the good ones that come to the marketplace. The ultimate idea for real estate that has outlived every person before we were ever even on this earth, or before podcasts were around, and long after we are gone. The number one rule in real estate is that cash flow wins. Period. No matter what. We've flipped well over, 400 or 500 homes. I don't even know how many anymore. Imagine if we would have kept those 400 or 500 homes. We would have every bit of options available to us, leverage available to us, equity, income, cash flow, assets, all these different tools, other than just the education behind what we learned doing 400 or 500 properties. If we would have kept those homes as all rentals, obviously you'd be making more income. We'd have a ton of equity right now because the market has skyrocketed since we bought those in the depression, or recession, I should say. And we would have had so many options available to us. But the bottom line is that cash flow wins. As a wholesaler, I've said this at the beginning of the podcast, and I'll say it 10 more times. You are only as good as your last month. Now, if you're really, really good and you're getting deals like the additional land deal where you can, you're smart enough to split that off and sell it, you just got a bonus payday that maybe now you're good for 2 months. But I understand the life of a wholesaler is you're constantly pinched between, dealing with buyer one day, seller the next day, buyer one day, seller. You're constantly having to transition back and forth between those. And even when, again, I've been in the situation where, we make $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, but when you have a company and a staff and a salary and a partner and marketing expenses, like, it got to the point in our business where we were cashing $30,000 checks weekly and not even shaking hands or going out and having, a good time as a partnership because we're just so busy running around onto the next. It's kind of an emotionless business. So cash flow is what's going to allow you to slow down, stay afloat, understand your value, leverage some assets, and truly put you in a position where when a great opportunity comes across your desk, you don't have to scramble anymore to figure out how you can maximize this deal. Because if you're a good wholesaler and you've been in the industry a while, you can likely think back to a couple of deals that if I could have just found a way to hang on to that deal, my family would have been set, my business would have been better off operating, I would have had a huge upswing at the beginning or at the end, or an equity share, or we've all had that one deal that we just wish we could have slowed down and walked around it properly and been able to maximize. And you're only going to be able to do that when you have cash flow coming into your life that says, I don't need to take this $5,000 payday right now. I can close on this one. I can walk around it. I can put it on the MLS and sell it for absolute ridiculous top dollar right now. The next thing you need to have that I want to talk about is you need to have some form of a freedom number. I know I see a lot of people, I follow some of the best wholesalers across the nation, and, I see everybody talking about, living on their MacBooks, and they're traveling the world all the time and all these great things. But wholesaling is nothing more than a glorified high income job. Albeit a great one that allows you time of freedom and place, wholesaling has changed my life for the better. However, you need to have a freedom number that tells you maybe you should have multiple freedom numbers. One of the students that we work with, we've helped them to identify several different freedom numbers in his life because he didn't have any kind of measurement tool that would tell him when he was quote unquote successful. So he's working a full-time job, working his 40 hours per week. He's wanting to get into real estate. He doesn't want to really wholesale. He just wants to begin buy and hold properties. But we had to put some freedom numbers in place that's going to let him know, like the measurement tool or the confidence number of when he can jump from one phase to the next. So he's like, man, I'm just so nervous about, quitting my job and, jumping into real estate because I just have all this fear. And well, first and foremost, don't quit your job. The first thing that you need to do is you need to build a reserve. What is the freedom number that you need to have in your bank account? I'm not saying your revolving lifestyle expenses. What is the freedom number that you need to have inside of your bank account? If you're a wholesaler right now, what is the number that you need to have on tap for reserves that doesn't get touched while you make this transition from wholesaler to rehabber, or wholesaler to developer, or wholesaler to landlord? Whatever it is, you need to put a couple freedom numbers in place. How much do you have to have as a reserve for you to say, you know what, I'm just going to say no to assigning my next deal, and even if it makes me stretch and go out on a limb and makes me uncomfortable financially, if I have to use my own money to do this, I'm gonna take my next great opportunity down and start this transitional process. If not, you'll realize that you just need another $10,000 payday. I just need one more $10,000, and then the next thing you know, you're like, I spent it on monthly bills, I had to pay off a credit card, I had to do my next marketing campaign, I had to pay my assistant, and you fell into the death trap of saying, I just need another $10,000 payday. So you need to put some freedom numbers in place. How much do you have to have if you're transitioning from a job to full-time, or if you're going from a wholesaler to a rehabber? What do you have to have as a bank reserve for you to say, I'm comfortable enough financially where I'm not going to be stressed out if I have to go out on a limb for a couple of months and, put this money out there for me to be a little uncomfortable, but you're transitioning into the next phase. Once you get to the point of transitioning into that, you're going to want to set another freedom number of what kind of monthly net rental income you have to have before you decide to move to the next phase of your business. It's relatively easy to get to $5,000 a month in rental income. Matter of fact, we have one building that generates $51.85 per month net rental income. The crazy thing is we only paid $12,500 for that building. Now, if I could go do that every week, I'd do it over and over and over again. That's the one-off, unique circumstances. Like that is like the once in a lifetime deal that comes across. But that one deal right there helped us to get to a freedom number in our business that allowed us to build another segment of our company. So you have to have, and again, you guys are going to realize how much confidence you have when the money in your life is there for you to fall back on, and you don't have to struggle to take the next payday to get your next, to get ahead of your next month. So put those freedom numbers in place, be realistic with it. Don't shoot for some pie in the high, sky high number that says I got to have 100 grand sitting in the bank account. You should be able to have 6 to 12 months of reserves for your lifestyle, not including your monthly revolving amount, or, you should have 20% over what your monthly expenses are coming in passively in order for you to say, okay, well, I'm going to get my builder's license, and, whatever it is, you're going to move to the next phase. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is repositioning. This is probably the most passionate point and one of the most important parts of transitioning. Is you're going to have to get to the point where you begin repositioning yourself in the conversations that you have with sellers, the presentation you have in your industry. And it took me bringing our mentor into town for him to spend 2 days driving around on the streets, and the only thing that we could ever show him was, we sold this deal here, we made 20, we sold this one, made 13, we did this one over here, we actually bought it and split the lots, we made, 40 on the lot that had the house on it, we made 80 on the vacant lot. And we had all these great stories that we were able to tell him, but he kept noticing as we were driving, we would always point out they own, such and such apartment buildings, or these guys own these beautiful multifamily brick and commercial rental properties. And it really helped me to understand that while we ran around and had some very, very great stories with some thick margins, some big paydays, some incredible opportunities for us to buy real estate in our market, we kept going back to these guys, the guys that really had what we want. And we had to find a way to become they. So we had to study who they were and begin finding out how we could become they. Well, a couple things went into place, and, the letters started going out and the calls started coming in. And we quickly realized that they spoke a totally different language than we. They think people who pay cash for properties are a joke. Oh, you're one of those fast cash home flipper guys. And these were very affluent, very wealthy property owners across town that most people, ourselves included, thought were almost untouchable, and we would never be to that level in our game where we could buy those kind of properties. After buying our first couple of deals from we realized that we had been cutting our throats all along, and we should have had a different model from day one. Again, think about buying 400 or 500 properties, selling a few, keeping the good ones, and the leveraged horsepower that we would have had today rather than flipping all of those deals. So you have to begin the repositioning process. And that process starts with your next lead call. The next time Mrs. Smith calls and says, you mailed me a postcard or a letter to buy my property, what is this about? You're going to have to change the direction of your conversation to say, whatever it is that wholesalers say to get these people to the closing table, because I know my conversation actually has little to do with the property and has to do with Mrs. Smith. what's going on in her life, where is she at, why is she interested in selling, what would she do when she sold, what would she do if she didn't, what are her real pains to why she picked up that phone and called me to sell me her property today. You're going to have to change the direction of your conversation to not just want to line yourself up for an easy, fast wholesale payday. And actually, many times, the wholesaler in me still comes out when I think of the price that I want to offer these people, and I realize that I'm here to pay fair market value. I don't need to steal this property, quote unquote, because I need to work a margin in for ourselves. We can pay fair market value, which is probably why we buy more properties than the majority of people in our marketplace. But over time, I've had to reposition the conversation that was going out on my mailers, the conversation they were hearing on my message, my pre-recorded message, the conversation we were having during our phone call. Because now my goal with every property and every call that I ever have a discussion with somebody about is to be the buyer. Even in the back of your mind as a wholesaler, you know you're assigning that contract and you may be there to quote unquote buy the property. My whole intention is to be the buyer of your property. Now, I very well may wholesale it, but I'm going to do that as a last resort, not as a business model. So it starts with your next phone call. It starts with your next marketing campaign. It starts next time you go to a networking event, is that you are looking to begin buying property and not have to wholesale your way to the top anymore. And if it's anything like my transition, I watched buyers fall away from us and never ever come back. That's all they wanted was deals. They didn't care about us, and that's fine and dandy. But we don't want people around us that are not collectively thinking and working toward the same grand goals that we have as real estate buyers, in the form of development, in the form of management, in the form of raising capital, in the form of structuring a deal to where everybody can eat off of it. We watch so many people disappear in our lives, and I still get calls from time to time like, man, you never call me anymore. What happened to you guys? Are you guys even doing real estate anymore? I don't even see you guys doing business anymore. And we're doing more deals. I don't want to say more deals than we've ever done before, but we are generating more wealth and equity and income totally silent in a way from the market. And they have no idea what's going on in our world whatsoever. And some of them are dumbfounded. Some of them don't care. I'm amazed that we haven't had more people come forward and say, man, you guys fell off the earth. But man, have you guys really transitioned your way to the top of the game. So one of the best ways that you can begin repositioning yourself is to, and this is one of our power strategies that we talk with a lot of our students about, is you're going to need to begin repositioning yourself to turn your buyers and your sellers into lenders. Now, to most people, that just flew right over their head, and they're like, that's like nearly impossible to transition. And don't limit yourself by that little 2 times thinking person that's in the back of your brain. We are living proof, and I have several references and case studies to show situations where people that were our best buyers years ago are now our number 1 lenders for our real estate projects. And there was many things that led up to that conversation and that breaking point and that discovery of one of our lenders started out as a buyer that was so easy, so simple, so fast. He is like the wholesaler's dream. He comes into your office, he gives full price earnest monies. He will close the moment he has clear title, and he is not here to finagle. After meeting with this guy several times, we found out the underlying reason, number one, why he moves so fast, but why he buys so much real estate is he has a company that generates so much income that he has to find a place to put the money. He doesn't generally want to buy a ton of real estate. He doesn't want to have to manage these properties. He just needs to put his money somewhere else other than a bank account that doesn't give him the returns he wants. So in having a lunch with him and a conversation, we just brought him an opportunity for him to put his money on one of our projects. And ever since that day, we've borrowed millions and millions of dollars, anywhere from 7 to 10% or 11% interest on these projects. And we took one of our best buyers and moved him into becoming a lender. And I have several case studies of people like that in our lives that started off as buyers, but when we went and met with them and we told them we are moving in a new direction, we were able to slowly bring them on board and get them to finance more projects from us and have never sold them another property since. They have security, they have collateral, they have income, they have everything that they need without having to deal with tenants, toilets, and taxes. And again, I have several references and case studies. This is not just pulling ideas out of thin air. I have living proof. Matter of fact, that we had one of our lenders that we actually let go of. We told him we weren't interested in doing business with him anymore. We had a gentleman contact us years ago off of a bandit sign. He called us and wanted to buy a property from us, do a little bit of a fix-up, and then sell it back to one of his kids on land contract. And I'll never forget the first time that I met him. I got out of my car, walked up, and the first thing he said to me is, "You are way younger than I thought you were. How do you buy these properties all over town?" And I says, "Well, I find guys just like you that have, several $100,000 or millions of dollars sitting in a bank account that are willing to put it out there at 8% so we can go buy these properties and cash in on these opportunities." And that gentleman never went on to buy a property for his son and sell it on land contract. He became one of our best lenders. He lent several $100,000 at low interest and let us kind of have free reign with his money because he believed in our business model. He's seen the level of activity that we were actively doing. And again, this was when we were like transitioning from a wholesaler into rehabbers. Again, I have case study after case study of just buyers that we've transitioned into lenders, let alone sellers. One of the easiest conversations that you can have, especially when you're talking to a property owner that built their lifestyle on cash flow, you're likely not going to have this conversation resonate with the husband and wife that, she bought a home in her 20s, he bought a home in her 20s, and then they met and got married, and then they moved into his house because it was bigger and they wanted to start a family and they just rented out. It's probably not going to resonate with that crowd. But when you meet somebody that's owned 3, 5, 10, 50 properties and have built their life on cash flow, you're going to find that they don't want cash. They want income. They don't want to get a lump sum of cash, have to pay the tax burden, and start unwinding their wealth by putting it in a bank account that's going to give them less than 0.5% of annual interest. If you can be the person to educate them and walk them through the process on how they can get 3, 5, 7% interest secured by a property that they've known their whole life, and you're going to pay them a monthly secured interest income stream on that, you're going to have a lot of ears that are listening in your direction. So one of the greatest ways to reposition yourself is to turn your buyers, turn your sellers into lenders, but it starts with changing your approach, your appearance, your message, your marketing, your conversation. Everything about you is like that whole cash in 3 days. I'm not your guy. Like, I can give you cash in 3 days, but even in my 10-year tenure of buying properties, I will tell you guys, I've never once had a seller come to us and say they need money in 3 days. Never once. It's never happened. Just for the record, so you guys know, nobody's ever came and said that to us once. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a strategy of, there's no way, no matter what market you're in, that this strategy will not work. If you are a wholesaler that's getting 20 to 25%, if you're negotiating good deals and you're getting an upfront fee that's equivalent to about 20 or 25% of the total net after repaired value of that property, there's no way that this formula will not allow you to start taking chips off the table, even if you wholesale your next 50 deals. But it's a very, very simple strategy that if your math is correct, if you're doing enough volume, there's no way that you can't start taking chips off the table, even if you wholesale your next 50 or 100 deals. And we call that our buy 3, flip 2, keep 1. If you're in a large market like California, you may have to bump that up to buy 5, flip 4, keep 1. There's no way that the math doesn't work out if you're getting good enough wholesale deals. So let's say you're going to go and buy or get 3 properties under contract. Your numbers should equal out to where you can sell those properties. Even if you have to rehab them, better yet, you should be able to buy 3, flip 1, and keep 2. You really could if you guys really, really up your game and want to get out of this hamster wheel of wholesaling properties. Buy 3, flip 2, keep 1. I can tell you several properties in one of the main wholesale areas where we've done this exact strategy, buying properties that are under $50,000 that you can wholesale and get very, very large wholesale fees, and now you own the next property that you buy free and clear. I've proven it. We've done it over and over and over again. The math cannot go wrong. So if you don't really want to focus on repositioning yourself, if you don't want to have the conversations with buyers and sellers, and you want to self-fund everything to where you just have 100% equity, there's no way you can't turn into a landlord with the buy 3, flip 2, keep 1, or the buy 5, flip 4, keep 1 model. Moving on, I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit more about owner financing, landlording, and wrap notes. Wrap notes are a deal that I don't have a lot of experience with, but I've been playing with them relatively heavily for the simple fact that we can generate comparable income to rental properties. And the only thing that we have to manage and service is the note. We don't have to deal with the taxes, the tenants, the toilets. We are simply servicing paper and collecting rental-like income without having to deal with property maintenance and people management. So we've already touched on owner financing a little bit, and that is a very, very deep rabbit hole that Steve and I have been, we became experts on it because we realized there was a gap in our marketplace when we were generating so many leads from a specific target market. And during our conversation, we're finding out that these people didn't want cash. They actually didn't even really want to sell their property. Their whole mantra was, I get these letters all the time. Eric, you've mailed me for years. I get it. I know you're serious now, but you mailed me. What can you do for me? And you give them that initial cash offer and they say, but the issue is Eric, I don't need any more cash. Matter of fact, what I want is more income. So what we did is we've created a platform that allows us to market for and educate and lead people down the path of how we can capture your equity. And rather than giving you one lump sum, we bleed it out over time with interest, secured by a first position mortgage in real estate, an annual paid insurance premium, and now we take over the tenants' taxes and toilets, and you simply collect a secured monthly interest income over time. That conversation was so easy to have with the proper target market. I wish I would have known about this strategy years ago, because I cannot think of how many leads we simply passed up on or found a different way to take that deal down and eventually just badgered that seller so much to where they just gave in, sold their property, and we cut our own financial throat because we didn't have this method or this process or the platform to take these kind of deals down. So owner financing is a very deep rabbit hole. I advise you guys to get educated. We offer tons of education, and there's no programs around it because it's very, very custom built. And again, there's no limit to where you can go when you're doing owner financing, because whatever you and the seller can agree upon are rules that you can put into place and have your escrow company follow through on. So landlording is, obviously the reason I wanted to include rap notes here is because most people just are absolute against being landlords, and that's perfectly fine. You can hire management. You can have, there's a million different ways to begin building wealth if you are not going to be the person that's going to manage these things hands-on. Go find a team manager, go find a realtor, go find, somebody who's very, very good at being a bulldog, being very diligent and thorough, can tell people no, make sure they collect rents. I mean, there's a lot of different options when it comes to landlording, but I want to talk a little bit about the power of a wrap note deal. There will be a resource below where I talk about a deal that we recently did where the seller was kind of at like a threshold of what we were willing to pay for the property. And I knew that I had a buyer in our back pocket that is paying like a premium dollar for properties. And I just thought it would be a situation where I can lock up the financing with the seller at a good interest rate for long term with minimal down, and then simply take that financing over to my buyer, sell it to him for a higher price, get more money down, still have a margin between what our buyer owes us and what we owe the seller. So not only are we creating a margin between the difference of those two payoff amounts, we're actually making a total spread between what we owe our seller and what our buyer owes us. So I know that probably just flew over a lot of people's heads, so grab a pen and paper just so I can help you understand this. So we agreed to buy a property for $150,000. We put $10,000 down. We pay 5% interest for 10 years on the $140,000 note. We go to our buyer and sell it to him for $175,000 at 7% for 10 years, and then he gives us $20,000 down. So he owes us $155,000. We owe our seller $140,000. We're giving our seller 5%. Our buyer's giving us 7%. So from $0 to $140, we are making a 2% margin on interest because we give our guy 5, our guy pays us 7. We're making 2% income every month for doing nothing more than making sure payment comes in, payment goes out. Relatively simple. Now, on the balance, and it's not a huge one, in this case, there's only a $15,000 margin between the $140,000 we owe our seller and the $155,000 our buyer owes us. We make a full 7% on that margin because we don't owe a balance to our seller. That $15,000 is our money in the deal that we are getting a full 7% interest on. Now, imagine if we didn't take $20,000 down and just kept it at the $175,000. We're making a full 7% on $35,000 of margin. What if we would have bought our property for $125,000? Or what if we were to sold that property for $200,000? Can you see how powerful it would be to begin doing a couple of wrap notes inside of your industry where you're like, I'm not a landlord. I don't have to deal with tenants, taxes, and toilets, but I'm making landlord comparable income. servicing paper for a living. So wrap notes are a very, very important way for you to begin transitioning out of being a wholesaler into generating rental income without you having to deal with the day-to-day operations and management and things like that. So there's so many people that are appealed by that model, and it's actually a very common one, but you got to take time to learn what's possible with financing. And I wouldn't advise you guys to look into land contracts. I get these old timers that come to us all the time and they're like, oh, so we're going to do a land contract. And no, we are not doing a land contract. Land contracts are a nightmare. These title companies go out of business. They lose these addendums. They lose the deed in escrow. It's just an absolute nightmare. And if land contracts were so common, every bank in the world would be paying cash for properties and selling it back to the homeowner on land contract versus getting a mortgage. Land contracts are not the route you want to go. You're going to have to find a better way to learn financing and get these deals to the table. Very simple documents. There is some liability in it. I think once attorneys get involved, the only thing that they care about is racking up billable hours. I'm not a big fan of attorneys getting involved. However, sometimes you must consult an attorney because you are dealing in real estate, not widgets. You got to learn financing. More importantly, you need to understand the power of moving collateral. You know, many of the deals that we just did, or many of the deals that we recently did, for example, one of our lenders recently came to us and he owns an apartment building. And he said, I'm interested in selling my apartment. I wanted to bring it to you guys first to see if you have interest. I'm willing to finance it for you guys if you're okay with that. And we ran the numbers. We didn't want to own anything that small anymore. We wanted to go after bigger units. And we says, well, why don't you let us sell the property for you? So we didn't expose it to the market. We didn't have to list it. I text a couple people that I know that are looking to buy some smaller unit apartment buildings. And we bought the property. So the way we structured this deal is we brought in a buyer. We got an option from our seller or our lender on his property. And at the end of the day, the way that we structured the deal, we made $30,000 assigning our rights to his property over to our buyer. But the biggest part of this deal was not the $30,000 we made. The biggest part of this deal is that when the seller got his money back, when our seller got his money back that he had initially put into this apartment, he brought that money right back to us and says, put this to work somewhere. Now, most people would look at a situation like that and either be totally blown away and say, that is absolutely genius and strategic and it took no risk on our end. Like, if there was a way to make money with no risk out of thin air, with no money, no credit, no risk, no nothing, that is the kind of deal that it would be. $30,000 assignment fee, and we got 10-year amortized, low-rate, single-digit financing on an income property that we put that money on. That is the deal of all deals that you want to get in the habit of doing, because you're going to like the big wake-up call for me was when I began to see real estate as two separate parts. I have the bricks and sticks and I have the financing. And for the longest time, it never occurred to me that I could sell the bricks and sticks, but keep the financing. I was always under the impression that once the bricks and sticks were gone, the person got their financing back. Whether it was a bank, whether it was my lender, whether it was our money, that money would go back to the person's bank account. So I'm going to share a case study with you guys in a minute where we show you several different ways to move collateral over to another property, because again, when you begin to see real estate as two separate entities, you got the bricks and sticks and you got the financing, you can sell the bricks and sticks day in and day out and keep bouncing collateral over and over. You just keep bouncing that money to another property secured by a mortgage. Day in and day out, I don't want to say most, but many of the deals that we do are simply moving collateral and reshifting and restructuring those kinds of deals where we just have very, very strategic, but never over leveraged leverage to buy more real estate. So I'm going to share a case study with you. You know what? Yeah, I'll share that with you guys in a minute, because I want to talk about this one part first. And that has to go along the lines with supercharged properties. When I was telling you guys about the building that we have that makes $5,000 a month in income, we paid $12,500 for the building. That property is actually located in an incredible part of Detroit. Now, I'm not a fan of Detroit. I don't like to buy Detroit. Maybe I'm an advocate, but I'm not an advocate for people going and parking money in Detroit, because there's way too many variables. People don't understand that Detroit is a new game of real estate within the game of real estate. And if you're not educated and armed properly, and I do mean armed properly, you don't want to invest in Detroit. So we bought this property through one of our attorneys who brought it to us and said, listen, I know you guys don't like Detroit. If anybody can make something happen with this deal, it's you guys. So the family wanted out. They were fighting. They didn't want, they were trying to play the blame game and shove the responsibility and liability. There were tenants in the building. The roof was leaking bad. I mean, it was leaking bad. We walked in, there were 15 buckets on the ground, leaking all over the place, but it was still performing and generating income from day one. So we bought the property for $12,500. We put $25,000 into a new rubber roof, and we increased the one tenant's income. We got the other tenant out, remarketed it, and then went for a tenant that was going to do a very large build out to that property. Now, we estimate depending on what kind of value approach you want to take. If you want to go ahead and do the whole income approach, I wouldn't, it would show that property's worth about $500,000. I would be hard pressed to say that somebody would pay $500,000 for that building. But let's just say that today it's worth about $300,000. Now, that's a great upswing. That anybody would take a deal like that. I would buy a property every single week. I would buy a property every single day if I could pay $12,500 and it brought me $5,000 every single month and skyrocketed to $350,000 in a couple years. The reason I tell you guys about that property, and again, that $350,000, it could be true, it could be not, depending on what somebody came forward on the market to offer us. But let's just go ahead and say it's worth $350,000 in today's quote unquote up market. It generates insane cash flow for what we have into it. Insane cash flow. We have another property, which is actually where our world headquarters is, in one of the most prestigious communities in all of Michigan, located on Woodward Avenue with 50 feet of Woodward frontage. Woodward actually is between 6 and 7 Mile. The first stretch of road in all of America is Woodward Avenue. Our office building is located just up the street from it. We occupy 2 of the units inside there, one for our coaching, one for our real estate. And that building is just classic construction, absolutely beautiful. It's what you want. It's what investors drool and salivate over owning, but think they can't own this property ever. So we bought this property several years ago for about $240,000. We stuck about $60,000 into the property redoing the units. We had 2 tenants come in downstairs and do $100,000 build outs and increase the value of the property. We got this thing operating like a well-oiled machine. I haven't had an appraisal done on the building. My commercial broker said it's worth somewhere around $700,000 today. But looking at the income for this property, it's not a huge amount of monthly net income. Now, the whole reason I tell you this story about these two properties is because this is what we call blending appreciation in cash cows. These are like a husband and wife team right here. You have the building we paid $12.5 for that, yeah, while it may be worth a lot today, it's still Detroit. You can't really bank on the fact that it's going to be worth millions of dollars or, even much more than $350 and maybe it goes to $500,000 in the next 30 years. Who really knows where that building is going to go from? But the one thing that I can bank on is that from now until the day that I sell that building, it will generate a minimum of $5,100 per month in climbing every single month. Moving over to the Woodward building, we bought it for $240. It maybe at the end of everything generates about $1,000 monthly cash flow. It's worth about $700,000 the way that it sits. But in 30 years, I would have to estimate that building to be worth somewhere over the $1.5 million mark. And while the building in Detroit may not be worth anything in 30 years, that property is what allows us to power pay the loan on the other building that doesn't make a ton of monthly income, but stands to be a future huge upswing of equity for my partner and I's retirement. So if you can learn to blend properties, it's what we call our superchargers. For every beautiful property that you buy in an in-demand part of town that doesn't generate a lot of cash flow, that has insane amounts of future upswing, you want to go to the other part of town where maybe it's not so pride of homeownership that throws off huge cash flow that pays down your loan, because in 30 years, you've got income and equity that carried you through the times and is going to allow you to have a great retirement. How many people have you come across, you wholesalers, I'm asking you this question, how many people have you come across back in the downturn of 2006, 2007, 2008, 9, 10, who were banking on retiring back in those days, but simply couldn't because their portfolio wasn't worth anything? These are guys that have been collecting hundreds of properties for the last, I know one of my main lenders, his strategy was to retire to Naples in 2005, and he wanted to wait just a little bit more, and then the bottom fell out and he lost all of his wealth. It wasn't his fault, it was based on the market. Now, had he bought in better areas of appreciation, and again, nobody really wants to sell in a down market, but I'm just saying, if you had to be in a position, or you were forced to be in a position in your life where you had to sell your portfolio, but 2 years ago your portfolio was worth double what you had to sell it for today, that's a very painful very painful conversation that you have to come to reality with. So learn and understand the power of going after deals that can really, really supercharge your income. And that doesn't mean I want you guys to spend your time in war zones. If I were to give you guys a single best source of advice, it would be go after the areas of great demand. Location, location, location. Go after the Chevy and the Cadillac neighborhoods and make sure that you guys are always choosing the high road after always defaulting back to the low end stuff. Because it's very easy to make money in the low end part of town with wholesaling. You can get in your car and go drive around and drop some mailers and absolutely go kill it in those low end areas, but you're doing high volume, it's unglamorous, you're dealing with shady people, versus going to the beautiful parts of town where you're only going to find a handful of properties that qualify for wholesale. You're not going to really build a business or a lifestyle doing high end wholesaling because the people are savvy, the margins are compressed, people know what they have. However, for every couple deals you can do on the low end. You may be able to pop one off in a higher end market and say, man, I just made $50,000 off this one deal. Normally I'm used to making $2,000 to $7,000 on an assignment fee. So understand the blend, know what that looks like, and begin to recognize it when you're out driving around saying, that's a building right there that will one day pay for my kids' college education. But this property over here is what's going to allow me enough income every single year to go on that vacation and be worry-free, just so I know that I'm spending the time with my family until we get to the point that I want to sell these assets to pay for that college. So understand the blend. All these are just, kind of some trying to paint some pictures for you guys to help us understand things that we see every single day inside of our business. So let me move on. I know I've taken up over an hour of everybody's time so far, so I want to talk to you guys, and there's an infographic below that you can download that tells the same story that I'm about to walk through. But years ago, my business partner Steve and I had a call from a seller that had a cheap little property that he wanted I think he wanted $17,000 or $17,500 for it, and he had came to us. I think he wanted $17,000 for the property, and came to us, and he was just kind of open to whatever. It was, I think he bought it from his mom's, bought it out of his mom's probate. Him and his brother tried to rent it. They didn't have very much success. They liked the idea of getting income, but they were open to options. So we gave him an offer to purchase the property for like $12,500 cash, or we said, we'll give you $17,000 if you're willing to be the bank. We'll give you $2,000 down. You hold $15,000 as a note at 4% for 5 years, and we can do the deal that way. So they went ahead and said, yeah, let's do the owner finance. We'd like to have some income for a while that's secured by the property. No problem. So we went to closing, closed on the property, gave him the $2,000 down, took it over, cleaned it up. We're starting the process of getting it rented out, and I got a call from one of our buyers back then, and he was like I need to buy a property like today to get one of my tenants. He was like, I cannot lose this tenant. She's a tenant we all dream about. She wants to live over here, and it just so happened that property was exactly what he wanted. So I called Steve, and he was like, but wait a minute, like, we talked about this. We're not selling this one. We're keeping it. And we ended up selling that property to our buyer and made a flat net $7,500 fee. We sold it to him for $25,000. We had the 17 or 17.5. I forget what the actual number was from our seller. But we had to go back to our guy and say, Rick, we sold the property. The problem is we told you that we wouldn't give you your money back for 5 years and you want an income. What if we were to take the mortgage that we gave you on the property you sold us and we moved it across town to another property that we own free and clear? Nothing would be disrupted. The property's generating income. There's equity there. We're just moving your collateral, your mortgage, over from this property, which was in Warren, by the way, over to St. Clair Shores, which is a much better market. We were trading up his collateral, and nothing changed. We got our $7,500 fee. Our buyer bought the property. We moved his collateral over to that other property. And meanwhile, we were in the process of negotiating a 4-unit apartment building in an A-class location in town. So it just so happens that the terms of that agreement were $159,000, $7,500 down, which magically we just made selling that other little booger property. $159,000, $7,500 down, $151,500 on a note, paying 7% for the next 15 years. We moved that deal into escrow, settled on it less than 30 days later, put our $7,500 down, gave the seller a mortgage and a note for $151,500, paying 7%, which is $833.33 per month for the next 15 years. We kept that property for about 15 months. We raised the rents. We put a little bit of rehab in it. We cash flowed, made good money. Got a letter in the mail one day from a gentleman who wanted to buy a property that we, just one of the guys who was mailing to buy apartment buildings. And we called him up, and I think he came forward and gave us $252, maybe it was $255 for that property. So I call Steve. I says, man, we got a pretty impressive offer on the table. It's hard not to accept it. The issue is, what do we do with John and Barb's money? And what do we do with the upswing that we're going to get from this? Like, where do we park, $100K profit right now, because we can't really replace our income. We got this property on great terms. It's cash flowing. We got it up and running well. Bottom line is, we went through with, I think it was $252 we sold that property for. Went back to our lenders that were the note holders on that deal and said, John, Barb, we have an offer to sell the property. The problem is, we told you guys we wouldn't give your money back for 15 years. We have another duplex in the same city that we were actually been paying 12% interest on. This deal, we bought it in the low time. This deal cash flowed so much money as a duplex, we were able to keep 12% money on it and still cash flow. So we sold the 4-unit, got the $151.5, paid off the underlying $107,000 12% mortgage on the other duplex, got the $80,000 or so profit from the 4-unit, put that into other properties that we bought on owner finance, and now we solved the problem of where to put John and Barb's money for the remaining 15 years. Another year goes by, we get contacted by a buyer who wants to buy the duplex, $265,000. So, and again, there's a lot of moving parts that I would have to show you on a whiteboard and have you ask a lot of questions, but sold the property for $265,000, had to call John and Barb again and say, we're selling the property that has the collateral of your money on it. However, we have a beautiful commercial building on Woodward Avenue where our office headquarters is located. We want to take your money and move it over to this 6-unit commercial building. So as you can see, we moved collateral several different times. We always met the criteria of having cash flow and equity to cover the amount of the debt service. The debt service is only $151.5 and $833.33 a month. Every property we moved it to was at least worth that and generating enough money every month to cover that interest. And matter of fact, we went from paying 12% on a $107,000 loan to it was cheaper for the $151.5 at 7% than it was for the $107 at 12%. So we increased our cash flow, and get this, when we paid off the $107, we only used $107,000 of that $151.5, but that money was ours to play with. Now, again, that doesn't mean you can go on vacation and buy Corvettes with it. That means you can be smart and go buy dollar producing real estate or invest it in you could, if you wanted to buy a Corvette, you could go do it. I'm the type of person that says that money was leveraged very strategically, of all things, but you want to take that money and continue to grow your opportunities, grow your cash flow, grow your business. And it is in those kind of situations that I took a step back and says, I was going to wholesale this deal and just walk away with $7,500 and be perfectly fine and tell this guy that it is what it is. We just got to pay you off. We sold. That would have been the absolute worst financial mistake of our career. Because again, like, it sounds easy on the podcast, but having to make the call and, structure these kind of things and get the paperwork and get everything flowing properly to where, like, this was new to us. I didn't speak the fluent language. I was still transitioning to they. So it's in this one transaction from a $17,000 booger house in Warren that finally allowed us to trade our way up to Woodward Avenue frontage that allowed me to say, I will never look at wholesaling properties as a first resort. It's not a business model. It is not something that I would consider sustainable to build a worthwhile lifestyle under. You're only as good as your last month. But when I take the time, and I still do this, I still hand write this same deal over and over on the board and say, we got great financing. We controlled assets. For $7,500 down, we cash flowed. I don't even remember how much money we made off the cash flow for 15 months. $7,500 down got me 15 years of 7% financing and an $80,000 payday. When I sold that deal and we recognized that 80 grand, we moved that 7% financing to another duplex. We sold that duplex and made over $100,000 profit. And we don't have to separate the bricks and sticks from the financing. We still control it. We just repositioned the place and where we park it. I hope you guys are really, really understanding how powerful and sincere and applicable this is to your real estate business. It has been the breakthrough, the monumental breakthrough in our business where we became they. And every wholesaler can go through the same transition because you control the market. You're learning how to keep the good ones. You know how to buy 3, flip 2, keep 1. You already understand how to reposition yourself. You're going to start having conversations with buyers and sellers and turning them into lenders. Hopefully, you're going to make the choice to follow suit and learn financing and owner finance and wrap notes and find a person that you're going to be able to bring onto your team to handle the landlord and management. Hopefully, you're going to get educated on the blending appreciation in the cash cow and identify properties that you may have right now in your database that you can pick up the phone and say, I can't believe I never thought about this. I was only looking at this thing one-sided from a wholesaler's perspective. Now you have a new set of goggles, a new way of seeing things. You have everything you need in your grasp right now to begin making the next phone call that allows you to open up the opportunity for you to become they. Become a buyer. One of the first things that you need to do is get in your brain, I am not a wholesaler. I am a buyer of real estate. Your conversations change. The quality of your appointments change. The people that you keep around in your circle begin to change. The next thing you need to do is you need to begin making 2 offers. When you're sliding over that quote unquote low ball cash offer that everybody talks about, give them an offer that makes perfect financial sense to them, but sets you up to put you in a position where you become the new they, where you're generating income, where you're giving out notes and having people take back mortgages and using money from last month's wholesale fee as a down payment on your first income producing property. And lastly, assign as a last resort, not as a business model. Download that infographic below. There's a couple of additional podcasts that you guys can download. The Learn to Build Wealth from Your Next Wholesale Deal, How to Build Wealth from Your Next Wholesale Deal, and then the 5 ways to structure your next real estate deal. Those 3 podcasts are additional resources and information that you guys can listen to right now that give the roadmap on how you guys can take your very next phone call, your very next marketing campaign, and start setting yourself up to have conversations with people that will allow you to become they. So I hope you guys got a ton of value out of this. If you did, I hope you share it and give it to somebody that could really, really use this information. I look forward to hearing. I need to have some feedback from you guys, some comments. If you're getting this in an email, send me some responses. You guys can find me on social media. All the links are below. Hope you guys subscribe to the iTunes podcast. But I need to hear your guys' feedback. What do you want to know more of? What did you like? What did you dislike? What do you need me to break down and go into bigger detail? Do you need modules? Case studies, things like that. We have all of this information available, but if you don't tell us what you're looking for, I could ramble on for days and talk about real estate, and if it's not relevant to you, it's not going to do anybody any good. Give us the feedback, get in the exchange, join us at one of our next mastermind groups, at our next meetup, schedule to get on a one-on-one strategy call so we can help you guys inside of your business. Now, we don't have all the time in the world. We only work with 100 people per year. But we want to make sure that we're helping you guys transition from where you are to where you want to be in the shortest time with the least amount of hassle. So thank you guys for spending the last hour and 15 minutes with me. I so appreciate it. You could have spent it so many other ways. I hope you got a ton of value out of it. If you did, please leave your comments below. Like, share, comment, love, tweet, whatever it is that people do in the social media world today. I thank you guys so much for taking the time to spend with me and get educated. It means the world that you are choosing to make a difference in your own financial future. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the flip side. Hey podcast listeners, it's Eric Stark from the Real Estate While You Drive podcast and the Faceless Leaders Group. If you've been listening to the show, you know that we've been testing a few big ideas at the Faceless Leaders Group for the last year or so. After nearly a year of development, planning, and waiting for the perfect economic climate, we are finally ready to launch one of the most ambitious and powerful initiatives in our group's development history. Go to ericsfreebook.com and you will learn directly from the real-life experiences of Eric Stark and Steve Mills and follow along on this incredible new venture. You will also learn about how to invest using your time instead of your cash, how to turn mistakes into opportunities, how to invest for value, and most importantly, how to make investments that build wealth instead of always going for the quick buck. And Eric's free book is not just for beginners. Even the most experienced real estate investors can capitalize with these strategies. When you learn and understand the real meaning of street-level investing and how to reposition opportunities, it adds tremendous horsepower to the deals you see each and every day that most investors simply pass up on. Quit guessing at how the market may fluctuate or how the pros make money in real estate. Learn from the real experiences and mistakes of the people who are successfully making money today in the real estate industry. In uncertain times, take control of your financial future. Go to ericsfreebook.com and download your very own copy today. This is only being promoted for a very limited time, so go to ericsfreebook.com. There is nothing to buy, just value-based, client-focused information to help you get started or even help you in your current real estate business. With extensive knowledge on wholesaling, rehabbing, building, zoning, owner financing, how to deal with probates, for sale by owners, tired landlords, portfolios, realtors, and most importantly, how to become a street-level investor who finds deals nobody else has access to, you are sure to pick up a few golden nuggets that you can implement in your business as early as today. Since you are a subscriber to the Real Estate While You Drive podcast, you know the world has more to offer than a day-to-day job and a paycheck. It's time to stop making other people rich and relying on outdated information. We have a solution for you, and along with an offer that you cannot pass up. For listeners of the show and subscribers to the podcast, Eric is offering a one-on-one strategy session that will allow you to plan, improve, and take control of your financial future. Just go to realestatewhileyoudrive.com, subscribe to us on iTunes, and click Book a Strategy Session, where you will learn real opportunities specific for your personal situation and use the same thought process Eric and Steve have used for nearly a decade to earn millions of dollars through real estate investing. Thank you for listening to Real Estate While You Drive. We look forward to having you on our upcoming podcast.